Hello everyone, I'm Colin Kinnett. Got a few things going on in the workshop today. First of all, I'm going to modify a jig on my bandsaw. I'm going to repair this stand that I made many years ago. We're going to cut some blanks on the table saw, some miter slot blanks. And I got a new wheel, a new cutting wheel to show you. It's kind of neat. So hang out with me in the workshop today and let's have some fun. Let's start off by looking at the jig that I'm going to do some modifications for. This is a jig that I made several months ago, and it's for cutting logs and cutting them into little boards. So like firewood logs, that sort of thing, where you get short logs. The only problem is that when I put wood on here, it's not very stable because this bottom part here, where I have you can see the miter blank sticking out of down there, it's not long enough. So I'm going to take this off and make a longer one for this so that I can put on a little bit longer pieces of wood. So here's my miter slot blank material, and you've seen me use this in a variety of videos in the past. Now the reason I have this blank material is I use it for the thickness so that I can set my fence. Now when you make this material, when you cut this material, you want the blank to be lower than your table saw deck. So you can see that it's just slightly below the deck, not very much, just slightly below the deck. And the reason you want that is if it's high, when you put a piece of wood on it, then the wood will rock back and forth, and of course you don't want that. You want this to be just slightly lower than the deck of your table saw. So I'm going to measure that up, and then we'll get cutting. I should also tell you, if you want to cut your own material, and the raw material that you get from the plastic store is a little bit thicker, then it won't fit in your miter slots. You can still cut your own. So cut the thickness this way, and then just turn it over and just take a skim off one side here, and you'll still end up with the same thing. So you don't have to have a planer. You don't have to plane it down. I just do that because that way it saves me a step. So I'm going to go ahead now and we'll cut that blank. Now I like that material to be snug, but I want it to still just drop right in that miter slot, and that's a nice tight fit like that. So here's that new base for my jig, and the old base was 14 inches and this one's 32, so it's more than twice as long. Now what I need to do, I need to mount this miter slot material on this base, and I've actually marked it. There it is there. And I've actually marked it, but this material, when you get this material, if you watch that, see how it bends, and it bends this way too. So what I'm going to do today, because it does bend, I'm going to put a piece of wood, and I've made sure I've got a nice straight flat piece of wood, and this is the reason I'm doing this on my table saw, is I'm going to butt that up there, then this board, and then this is going to go right up against that like that. And when I put the screws, because I'm going to drill screws through here and fasten that, when I do that, it will be nice and straight and flat, because if this material goes into a miter slot and it's bent, it's going to be tough to push. In fact, if it's too bent, it won't go at all. So the first thing I need to do is drill some countersink holes all the way along here. So I'm just going to use this backer board here, and you can see that I've marked where the screws want to go in all the way along, and I'm going to use this countersunk bit here and just drill holes all the way along. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Okay, now let's test this thing and see how it's. Oh yeah, perfect. All right, that works good. Now what I did in the last base to get these bolts sticking through, they actually are bolts, and all I did was countersink a couple of holes there with a Forstner bit, and then put these in, and I just used some CA glue, and you know what, they've held really well. They don't spin around, so I think I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Effort. Wow, works well. There's the bolt that I want to insert there. So the first thing I'm going to do is drill a hole for the head to fit into. There, I'll do one on the other side. Now that I have that recessed hole in there, and you can see that I drilled a pilot hole to begin with, now I'm going to drill a through hole for the main part of the bolt to go through. And do the other side. Now the next thing I'm going to do is put a little bit of CA glue around the bottom of that first hole that I drilled, the recess or the countersink. Then I'm going to spritz the bottom, just the bottom of the bolt. And when that drops in there, it's going to lock it in there, and I'm going to drive it in so that it seats. And the next thing I'm going to do is add a little bit more CA glue, because there's some little gaps. You can barely see some little gaps in the sides, and that will fill in those gaps. And when I spritz this, it locks that in there just super tight. There. We'll do the same on the other side. Okay. Spritz the bottom. And if you get too much on there, you can just sand that off. Okay, that's done. Well, now hopefully I've got those holes in the right place. Okay, perfect. Now that's actually going to sit like that. There we go. Okay, you can take this over. Okay, that goes a lot better. It gives me a much longer range to work with than that little short one that I had. Now the next thing I need to do on my outfeed table, I want to use that roller stand, but I want to fix that because it sticks in one side. So let's do that. Here's that roller stand that I showed you earlier, and when I made it, I don't even know what I used to cut this slot out, but this hanger bolt that's in here is binding on this one side, so I'm going to mark it and grind it out. I've tried to do it before, and I can't seem to get in there and do an even job of it, so that's what I'm going to do today. But I want to show you this blade that I've got to do this with. So here's that blade that I picked up. It's called, I think it's called a graph or something. I'll put a link in the article on Woodwork Web. You'll get to see that. And it fits in your grinder. It's a 5-inch blade, so you need a 5-inch grinder. But it's got carbide. I don't know if you can see. I've already used it a little bit. It's got carbide, a ridge of carbide around the side, and it cuts through wood like crazy. It really does. It's not quite like a circular saw, but it's pretty similar. It's really great for cutting grooves and things like that. I could see house renovations or something like this would be the ideal thing. One of the reasons I bought it was I thought it might be good to do carving because I wanted to carve out the inside of the spoon, and it does do that, but it's really dusty, so for carving is probably not ideal unless you're doing it outside. Then it would be perfect because it really goes through wood well. But right now you can see that I've marked the edge of my slot here, and I'm just going to lightly take a little bit of that off where I've got the felt pen mark so that that should slide in there a little easy. So let's give that a whirl. Okay, I plugged it in. Let's give this a whirl here and see how this is going to work. Wow, does a great job. I think I'll do the other side while I'm here too. Yeah, let's give that a try. That's better. There we go. That's perfect. That's excellent. Okay. That cap back on there. There you can see that's a pretty nice edge on that. That's great. Okay, and there's what that stand, why it's nice and high like that. Well, that concludes my video for today. Thanks for hanging out with me in the workshop today. I'm Colin Cadet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.